then I just began understanding that in shamanism, you also learn how to connect. You can put your consciousness in a rock, you can extract information, connect with the soul of a tree, which I was already doing, but I thought I was crazy. I'd be sitting on my porch, I'd be drumming, and a tree would say, "Hey, hey, over to your right. Hey." I'm like, the tree is talking to me? I know I'm losing it now.
Welcome to Supernomalized, the podcast where we challenge the conventional, break boundaries, and normalize the seemingly supernatural. Join me, CJ, as we explore less uncharted realms of existence and unravel the mysteries of life experience. My treasured listeners, if you have a life story or healing modality or unique knowledge that you'd love to share, reach out to me at Supernomalized, that's Supernomalized with a Z, at proton.me. Let's together embrace acceptance of the supernatural and unusual as what it really is, completely normal. Today on Supernomalized, you'll meet Sheila Seppi. Sheila is an soul exchange walk-in. Now, what that is, it's like when a spirit, or actually, should I say like, it actually is when a spirit walks into the body and the spirit that was in the original human body is taken out in part. And in doing so, the new, spirit that has walked in becomes a part of an integrated experience of the world. So this happened to Sheila when she was a 38-year-old mother and with 3 children, and it instantaneously healed her from many, many documented illnesses. She was actually at a point in her life where she could barely walk, and it changed her personality, gave her spiritual gifts and memories that she didn't even believe in. But it took a while, and the spirits and the other dimensions on the other side assisted her in that integration and allowed her to start working with people and changing the world around her to a better place. She now works in this and is the founder of the Conscious Awakening Network, the Galactic Alliance, Spirit Way Ministries, and has a podcast, is a podcast herself, a podcast host herself, I should say. And yeah, I think you'll enjoy this conversation today. It's quite wild and very deep in different ways that you may not expect. And to have somebody come on with such a multidimensional understanding is really welcome. And I really enjoyed this one. Please enjoy the show. Welcome to Supernomalized, Sheila Seppi. Sheila is a person that's known as, has had a walk-in. Now, we need to define what that is. A walk-in is when a spirit or an entity comes into your body and changes your life in a massive sort of way. So that's happened to Sheila. So Sheila, welcome to the show, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about this process and what actually happened to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation to be here. And I'm always excited to talk to people about walk-in experiences because when I walked in, I had no clue what had happened to me. And fortunately, within, the first 6 months, probably 3 to 6 months, I found my first spiritual teacher, which I'll explain about that, but I didn't have anybody. And so I always love sharing this. But what happened to me is in October or September of 1999, I was a person who was very, very sick. I had been diagnosed with bone cancer, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I walked with a cane. I had what was called erythema nodosum, sarcoidosis. I walked with a cane, because it was too painful to walk by myself. And I
Wow.
had the beginning stages of rheumatoid arthritis. So Celebrex was really my best friend. I was very Western medicine. I had never read a metaphysical book. I had absolutely no spiritual knowledge because growing up in the South, I was religious and not spiritual. And
Mhm.
if someone then had told me that I would be doing and be what I am today, I would have laughed them out of my house because I didn't believe in anything like this. But
Yeah.
what happened is I went to bed a very, very sick person. And the very next morning, I sat bolt right up in bed, but it felt like someone had reached down and grabbed me by the hair of my head and pulled me bolt right up. And then it was like lightning had run through my body. Then I was in white space. Now, I don't know how long I was in that white space, but I do know that I was out of pain. I was very comfortable. I was surrounded by unconditional love. And given the opportunity, I would have stayed there. However, that's not what the universe had in store for me. So the next thing I know, my peripheral vision is coming in and then my frontal vision. And as I sat there looking around my room, everything was the same, but everything felt different. And I didn't know how it felt different. And as I got up and I started walking across my bedroom, I could feel the carpet under my feet. And it was like, ooh, this is gushy. I like it, kind of thing. And I walked by the mirror and I caught my reflection. And I just stopped and stared because I was mesmerized. It was like I was looking out using my eyes, but looking at somebody else's body. And I couldn't understand that. Well, at that time, I was also, like I said, very sick. I had a high profile job and I was in a dysfunctional marriage. Plus, I had 3 young children. So I'm just kind of trying to wipe everything off, and just kind of discount it as if, okay, this is just weird, but you're weird, you're sick. Just take it as part of the illness. And
Mhm.
then I started seeing people that were not there. And I started hearing voices that was not there. And then the next thing that happened is I started remembering past lives that I did not believe in. I started remembering universal truths that literally have taken me 24 years to unpack a lot of that information. And I started remembering healing modalities that I'd never studied. So, with my background being in psychology, I knew just enough to be dangerous to myself. And I thought I was having either a nervous breakdown or a psychotic break, or because I couldn't remember anything either. I was having a dissociative disorder. I was just diagnosing myself left and right, trying to maintain normalcy. Because within the first 3 months of the walk in coming in, I left the marriage that I was in and I took my 3 young children. Now, my children were ages 3, 6, and 12. And so for them, all of a sudden this was great. Mom could play with them. We could go outside. We could swing, go to the park. We could do all kinds of fun stuff. Whereas before, the old mom laid around on the couch, but my older daughter knew. She knew something was right. And she told me years later, she goes, I knew nobody could change as much overnight as you had. I knew something had happened. But within that first 3 months, everything in my life changed from the way that I ate, the foods, the music I listened to the clothing, that's my little dog Willow, to the clothing that I wore, everything about me changed. And everybody noticed it because my articulation level changed. And I spoke about things that I would have never, ever considered talking about before. Things about, I remembered what it was like for the soul to leave the body. I remembered what it was like to come back in. I remembered things from the other side that in my group anyway, you didn't talk about that. And if you did talk about it, it was one of those subjects. It's like, okay, this is taboo, just get aside. And so within those after I had left that marriage, within another 3 months, I was offered a position to go to work in a different state, working for a congressional office as their tourism manager for about a third of the state of Kentucky.
Wow.
And when I accepted that position, I really didn't know what I was doing. And I really didn't have any knowledge to pull from because really all I remembered were my children and my parents, and that was about it. All my friends I lost contact with because I mean, I had nothing in common with them. And even my mom noticed and sat me down on the couch and wanted to have a conversation because she thought I was having the beginning stages of Alzheimer's because I couldn't remember any of the family she was talking about. I didn't know any of my old friends, nothing. And so my life went on like that. Of course, I ended up having to explain to my mom what the situation was. But when I moved to this different state, I was looking, of course, this dates myself here. I was looking in the back of the telephone directory, and lo and behold, there was this ad for a spiritual counselor. Now, spirituality spoke to me because I was religious. I didn't even know the difference at the time.
Yeah.
And then a counselor spoke to me because I was like, man, I got to talk to somebody because I'm about to lose it. I was trying to act like I was a normal person. And I was seeing and hearing all of this stuff. And it's like, oh my God, they're going to lock me up. So when I went to see this counselor, I was hoping she would write me a prescription, give me a little pill, I could take it, poof, everything would go back to my dysfunctional normal life.
Mm,
But
mm.
that's not what happened. And she introduced me to the concept of walk-ins, and I was
Oh,
furious because I could not accept. It's like, what do you mean my soul left and another soul came in? That's not possible. But this was not just an ordinary counselor. She
Mm.
also was of Hopi lineage. And she invited me to join some of her women's groups where I learned about shamanism. And it was through shamanism that I really was able to anchor in and to meet these strange people walking around and talking to me because those were what we called my spirit guides.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, my life was just turned upside down.
That's huge. I can't imagine what that would have
Yeah.
been like. I mean, do you know like why you you got into that position where were so ill? Was that like just the precursor to this, or was it something like you were in a cocoon, it was time for change, and that was the way to actually get to that change?
I think it was a little of both because
Yeah,
of the dysfunctional marriage and the life that I led. And I had such from the time I was 20 years old, I had a very depleted immune system and was diagnosed with a whole lot of, yeah, I didn't go into everything that they had diagnosed me with, but, I was a very sick person. And so I think what had happened, um, and this gets a little crazier because when people first hear this story, if you're not familiar with walk ins, it's like, okay, this is just a little outside the box. But I love the name of your show, Super Normalized, because we're normalizing these types of conversations. So thank you for doing what you're doing. But
exactly.
anyway, before I came in, I remembered what it was like to be on the other side. But I also had these crazy memories about being in a different star system and working with my guides. And years later, the information came to me that when I incarnated into this body, I actually incarnated not from a single soul waiting to come in and have an earth experience, but I incarnated from what's called a collective. Now, a collective, if this is an oversoul, all of these little fingers here are multidimensional experiences, and they also represent what my collective called the Shantias Khan. So each one of these fingers is a Shantias Khan. And I was part of a collective where all the Shantias Khans, all those multidimensional aspects had come home. And we were working in the Andromedan system as a single consciousness. Now, I was told that I was seventh density, meaning that we were actually pure consciousness. And this consciousness was called back to planet Earth by Gaia because during the 80s, there was an effort on the spiritual level to repair the crystalline grid of the Earth. The crystalline grid is what holds all of the life codes for the planet. It also holds all of the ascension codes. And originally, Gaia, this planet was a fifth density planet. But
Mm.
back thousands of years ago, there was a piezoelectric pulse that began to be targeted at the Earth. And as it hit the crystalline grid, it surrounded the Earth and was sending in different types of information, not that higher vibrational fifth density information. It was sending in codes like fear, separation, all of those, what we call negative kinds of emotions. And it was connecting in with the crystalline grid or the liquid light grid inside of Gaia. So the beings on this planet were receiving it two ways, from above and below, and their DNA began to be imprinted with these fear codes, which is what we call the false matrix. And
Mm.
so this false matrix was very much being permeated for thousands of years. But in the early 80s, that whatever happened, that piezoelectric field was no longer being pulsed at the Earth. And then all of a sudden, what happened? People start having spiritual awakenings. And from about the 80s on, more and more people started spiritually awakening. It was very, very slow at first. There was a spiritual awakening of sorts in the 60s and a little bit in the 70s, but in the 80s and 90s, it began to gather this momentum. And in 2000, it really started, kind of ramping up. Well, when we were called back to assist with this Earth grid, one of the things that happened is we merged yet again with all of the other, if you will, consciousnesses that had come to assist Gaia. And what we were actually doing was repairing that crystalline grid. We were trying to take out all of the old programming, put in the new programming, and beaming unconditional love, etc. Well, this grid system is not just for the 3D Earth, but for all the dimensions and all the densities and everything that encompasses this planet. And so there was a lot of work going on. When the soul of this body, the old Sheila, when that old soul cried out to be released, that signal was picked up by my group. And it was decided that I would be the aspect to incarnate and embody here on the earth, because then I could be boots on the ground. So they're up there still beaming in all of these beautiful light codes and all of this information to help people wake up and to support them. And I'm here on the ground doing the same thing. And so I had a lot of those memories. So, that's not something you sit around and have a 3D conversation over dinner with.
No, no, it's got to be with the right people. Otherwise, people probably just think, okay,
Exactly.
okay, this is strange.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that. It makes sense that you might have been. I mean, you would have had that seed in your DNA, which is like a frequency transmitter as it is anyway. So when you were born, certainly possible that the reason why you got ill and everything was in preparation for this change. It might have
Absolutely.
you might have needed to burn away whatever energies that needed to be burned away, and you might have also been reflecting dimensionally all of those other frequencies which aren't meant to be in the grid as well, which is probably why you were caught up with all those illnesses.
It very
So
well could be.
yeah, so to have your walk-in pop in like that and clean it all up, it's just obvious to me. It makes sense.
Right. Well, actually, what happened, if you'll remember, with this being the oversoul and this being the Shantias Khans, I am not a future aspect of the old soul. I am
Mm,
a totally different aspect, and even coming from the much higher oversoul, from the
mm,
soul families, etc. But I still had that resonance factor, because when a walk-in comes into a body, and for me, it's a soul exchange, one soul out, another soul in, there has to be a recalibration of the physical body and all of the spiritual bodies as well. And so all of the chakras have to be changed out. All 12 of the bodies have to be changed out. Everything has to be rewired. And so when I entered the body, only drips of what I am today could actually enter in. And that kept the higher vibration from really frying the neurology and the biology
mm,
of this
mm,
body. But the cool thing is, the soul that was here before was an Arcturian soul. And so I already had this framework laid within my system and within my collective. And we've all, this is nothing unique to me. All of us, everybody listening, has had so many lifetimes. And so for me, the energy that first came in was that Arcturian energy. And that way there was like this energetic match, and then the system could begin to clear up. When I first entered and I started having those past life memories, they're actually not this soul's past life memories. They were the memories of the other soul because they were imprinted into the cellular structure of the body. And so they were activated. And when a new soul walks in, they have to take on the other karma, the other person's karma and their life plan as well, in addition to their own life plan. So it took me, gosh, I don't know, it took me probably a good solid, 5 years to get into the body, integrated, really understanding who I was, what it was about, and to start cleaning up the DNA, and probably another 5 to 7 to really anchor all of that in so that I could have worked through this, the old person's, all that karma and everything that the responsibilities that I had agreed to before I could even start my mission.
Right, right. It would have been huge for your family to see that massive change, and it would have been lovely that your mother has accepted that you've been through this change as well, and then to be welcomed into the original American people's groups to be able to gain more understanding of all of this.
Mhm.
I mean, how did that roll out for you with that? I mean, you met some people through the online advertisement, but then what happened?
Okay, so uh, when let's see how let me back up, get the right story in alignment, because when Jeremy, who was my spiritual teacher, ended up being my spiritual teacher and counselor,
Yeah,
invited me to this first group, she was just getting these groups of women together. So she was introducing a lot of different things. Some of the women really got into like the remote viewing, and some of them got into all of the clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience.
yeah.
Some of them got into whatever it was they got into, and for me, I dropped into shamanism because I was already doing all those other things. I just didn't know what they were. And so in shamanism, for me, we all learned together about all of these different things. And so most people finally found a group where they didn't feel like they were out of place, where they didn't feel like they had to hide their gifts, where they could say, gosh, I got this message from, and we'd say, oh, that's cool. What did they say? Instead of like, kind of backing up out of the doorway to get away from them. And so, we very much, we started out as a group of 7 women, and everything grew over time with this group. I ended up becoming an apprentice to this Hopi elder, and was so and still am actually. So this is going on 24 years that I have sat with this particular elder and worked with her, because for me, I found that a lot of the indigenous teachings were so true. Like one of the first teachings that she was sharing with us is, on the other side, there is no guilt and shame. There just is. And that's very true. But here, because of society and the norms and the churches, everybody is guilted into things. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas. You should do this, you should do that. And then we have all the isms that come into play as well. But that's not what it's like on the other side. And for me, the one truth that I have carried through everything is that I truly am a soul having a human experience. And when I say that, I mean that with every fiber of my being, because this is simply the vessel. This is simply like a car. That's it. It helps me to get around. It's like my Sheila spacesuit for planet Earth, and I'm playing like I'm an earthling, but really what I am is a soul that is here to grow, to expand, to experience. And I always tell my students, if you're having a bad day or you're so super angry or somebody's triggering you, drop into gratitude for that, because that person that's triggering you probably is one of your greatest allies on the other side and has come to trigger you to let you understand there's something inside of you that needs healed. Because if they were doing a particular behavior and there wasn't a resonance with you, you wouldn't even notice it. It would just, be like water on a duck's back and roll right off. But you notice it, you drop into it, it triggers you, you feel something inside. It's either anger or frustration or whatever it is. But when you feel that, know that that is something that needs healing. And when that happens, instead of being angry at the person, drop into gratitude, but work on yourself. And when you really get angry, when you really get frustrated, when you really get scared, just kind of stop and like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I'm backing up because this is a human experience. I am the co-creator of my own reality. And in 100 years, this isn't going to matter anyway. So, you can look at things from a much higher perspective because, if you look at it as an analogy of we are the person who is writing a video game and we're also the character in that video game, that's what life is. And we set ourselves up with different situations and scenarios in order to heal. And a lot of people say, there's absolutely no way that I would have agreed on any level for the horrific things to happen to me that have happened to me. And when we say that, we're saying that with human eyes. We're saying that from a human perspective. But on a soul level, you better betcha. We sure did set that up because that's helping us to grow. It's helping us to learn to release. It's helping us to learn compassion, self love, maybe even self care. Who knows what the lesson is? But if we look at everything in life as a lesson, then it's so much easier for us to be able to move through life.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's a very good message in that. I've got a question for you about when you connect with the beings in the other dimensions. For you, is that like a process that you have to go through, or is it something you just tune into when you're already there?
I am them and they are me.
Yeah, right.
And so we have a constant exchange of information. Over time, I have been able to incorporate more and more of the soul essence of the collective.
Mhm.
And it's still just a tiny little drop of it. But as a human, I'm holding about as much as I can, but it's
Yeah.
switched to a higher vibration. They're always with me, they're always talking to me. I can hear them. If I've got a question, they answer. And I'm like, my life is pretty easy, because I just let them do all the work. I tell people, they're like, oh my God, how do you get all this done? It's like, you know what? I'm the laziest person you'll ever meet because I let my group do it all. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. At first I would have these ideas and I'm like, wow, that's a great idea. Look at me. And after a while they're like, it has nothing to do with you. That's us. That's our idea. Give us a break. Come on. Move the ego outside. Let us get to work here. I'm like, oh, okay, but
Mm,
it really is. I feel like I've been guided, guarded, and protected every step of the way being here. It's been really interesting how doors have opened and people have just literally come into my life the second that I need them.
wow. Yeah, yeah. Because everything is guided all the time.
Yes,
Brilliant.
absolutely.
Do you have any memories from being on the other side?
I do. Some of them are pretty strange. Just a moment.
Sure.
One of the memories that I hold prior to incarnating when I was still in the Andromedan system is we were observing something. We were at the very edge of the galaxy because, eh, you know, when we disembody, when our soul is outside of the body, we're not just sitting around on a cloud drinking cappuccino. We're doing stuff. We're growing. We're expanding. And because of where we were, we just didn't have a body. But we were in observation mode, still growing, still expanding, and we were observing there was AI tech that was coming in, and it was in the form, well, I don't want to tell you the form yet, but let me just tell you what was happening. So we were at the very edge of the Andromedan galaxy looking out. It was total dark space. I don't remember seeing any stars. I don't remember seeing any light whatsoever as this thing is coming towards us. But over to our right, there was this huge spaceship. And as this thing got closer, it began to send out, it was like a net, but not a net,
Mm.
because it was more like laser, and it encapsulated this thing and it began to pulse. And as it pulsed, this thing began to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. And after that memory had occurred, I told my husband about it, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool," because he's so used to. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened now," and he's just like, "Okay, great." And we decided we would watch a movie together, and we sat down, and for some reason, this movie called Moonfall, really got my attention. And as we started watching it, one of the first scenes, there was this metallic worm like creature that starts coming at this spaceship that's out there. Okay. That is exactly what I saw when I was still in consciousness form coming this way. And so, needless to say, I'm like, oh my God, what I saw. I'm going crazy because that my memory was being played out right there in the movies. So somebody, whoever wrote that movie, also had contact or information about this certain type of AI technology. And so that's, one of the memories. One of the other
Mm.
memories that I have is the integration as we came in to this crystalline grid system that's around the earth. And it was kind of like, it was a boom, it was like a clunk, like a locking into place, this energy, and then this magnificent unconditional love. I mean, when I think about that, when I drop into that space, I just start crying because I really can't contain that energy, but it is the most beautiful energy there is. And even though we were all one mind, if I wanted to say, "Oh, I'm going to raise my arm," I could raise my arm, but it was like a twinkling of lights. And I I knew what it was like to have an arm. I didn't have an arm, but I knew what it was like to have an arm. I knew what it was like to raise the arm. I knew what it was like to be the bone inside of an arm. I had all kinds of memories and sensations, but when you're in consciousness form, although you know everything, to be it is different. And so that when I talk to people about when source desired to know itself and the creator wanted to become the created,
Mm.
I know exactly what they're talking about and what that feeling is. Because, if you think about eating an apple on the other side where I was in that form, I know what it was like to be the tree, to have the roots in the ground, to have all the nourishment coming up, to be the bark on the tree, to be the creatures that are on the bark of the tree. I knew what it was like to be the leaf, the branch. I knew what it was like to be the apple, for the apple to fall, for someone to pick it up, for someone to bite into it. I knew what it was like to be the seed, the skin, the whole 9 yards. But you don't taste it. You know what the taste is like, but when you taste it. So needless to say, when I got here, man, I was touching and feeling everything and eating all kinds of stuff, but very quickly my diet changed, however. But that was probably one of the most profound memories. And the fact of knowing that the soul never dies. Never,
Mm.
ever, ever,
Mm.
ever dies. It's in this constant state of learning, in this constant state of expansion. And for me, I find it so, um, I mean, it's almost unbelievable that people cannot believe in life forms on other planets. I mean, I just can't get that. And to think that extraterrestrial life is scary, no, it's us. We are them and they are us. Some of them could have been the progenitors to this planet.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is there's so much life out there, and every person listening here has experienced lots of that life and has experienced what it's like to be the element of air, a drop of water. I'm also a QHHT practitioner, and I had a client that I, they were under hypnosis and they were describing a lifetime. And at first I thought they were talking about a fish because they were talking about being in this fluid environment and da da da. Well, come to find out, they were describing being a water droplet, and
Wow.
there was above them, there was a shipwreck, and they saw the people, they saw the fire above. They described the scene perfectly, and as people were coming under it, they described how they saw the soul leaving the body. Total normality, you know, total like, oh, and this is the way it is. And we finally figured out that they were a drop of water. So we have been everything, and
Mm,
probably will continue to experience ourselves in many, many other forms. And, for me, the important thing about the ascension on this planet right now is the fact that we're breaking out of that false matrix. This is the first time, Gaia has been through many, many forms. And the Hopi people say that we're living in the fourth world on the cusp of the fifth. And with the destruction of each of those worlds, there has been a rebirth. But when it's came to the fourth world this time, all of life was imprinted on by that piezoelectric field that was being sent in and making contact with the crystalline grid. And so, for humanity to break free of thousands of years of programming, to remember who they are on a soul level, to understand that they truly are co creators of their own reality and that they are ever living beings, man, that's profound.
and huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, look, it's obvious that you have a multi-dimensional understanding of uh, everything, which is, obviously what would happen if you are from
Yeah,
multi-dimensions and aware of it. That's fantastic.
right.
And by the sound of it, when you're talking about the other realms and the understanding of, say, eating that apple from the tree, it seems like it almost follows like a dream logic sort of space. It's like it's not exactly the same as here, but it's also similar, but it's lacking certain aspects that are valued when you're in this dimension. And I find that fascinating. And I'm not sure what sort of question I should ask around that, but it seems like do you think that as we grow and adopt an understanding of this multidimensional experience of the world, that more and more of us will eventually just start to wake up? Is this sort of like an ascension process that we're all going through?
Absolutely. We are going through this ascension process. And I think that, as I said, because we are not being imprinted any longer, but we hold that imprintation within us. And
Yeah.
because we are co creators, we are promoting that outside of us and buying into a preconceived set of rules, which could easily be broken. A lot of people are still stuck in that 3D reality. But when we realize who we truly are and we operate from that place, we begin to bring into ourselves higher and higher frequencies,
Mm.
and our own DNA begins to shift. And for me, that's the important thing about this ascension. Most people here, they've been through many, many ascensions. Ascension is nothing new. But what's new for this planet is the fact that as this conscious awakening is coming upon the planet, it's also a breaking free of that false matrix. And when that false matrix is broken away, no longer will that ever dominate this society again. And so that's how easily it is to transfer from the 3D to a 5D reality. Now, when I talk about Ds, I talk about dimensions and densities because for me, my perception of a dimension is a shifting in the consciousness. It's a shifting, an increase of the vibrational frequency that we're able to hold. And we
Mhm.
can do that easily on a third density planet. And density has to do with the level of mass. So when I say I was a seventh density being, in fourth density, you still have a body, but you start to move, like the physicality that we are now is basically carbon based. But when you move into the fifth dimension, fifth density, then you're looking at carbon and silica. And you move into five and you're looking at silica. And then you're looking at silica and light and silica, all the way until you get up to a liquid light. Well, the form that the form that I was in was one of those light stages. And so that's why that I didn't have a body, but we're all progressing. People that say, well, I came from the 22nd dimension. Well, cool. That could be on this planet or another planet. Because on our planet, we also have 144 different dimensions because we have the 12 dimensions, and within the 12 dimensions, we have 12 subdimensions. But it becomes a place when you're able to hold that frequency and live that frequency. And then the consciousness begins to shift and change. But if someone says, I'm from the 22nd dimension, well, chances are that's still within this planetary realm, and they just are operating at a higher frequency. And when your frequency starts to raise, then you no longer can be seen by those around you. And so those people who are truly holding that fourth density energy, we can't see them because the molecules are vibrating faster. And then when you get to fifth, they're vibrating even faster. But a fifth density can see fourth, third, second, and first. A first density can only see first. A second density can see first and second. And so you can see where you are and all of those densities, below you.
Yeah, it's like different states of matter, but in a spiritual sort of
Absolutely.
way. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Can you describe your soul reconnection technique that you developed as a part of your personal growth there?
Absolutely. So I conduct private sessions with people, and I have a healing team. They're an Arcturian healing team. And so when I'm conducting a session, I'm doing my work and they're doing their work. And I can see what they're doing with the person. And even if a person is sitting up, a lot of times the person's part of their energetic body is taken out and it's worked on and it's stretched out. It could be on a crystal table. They could have taken it to a craft, whatever it is. But I stay connected with that as I'm still doing my work. Well, one day, the Arcturians were working on a body, and all of a sudden they stopped and they stood back. And I was like, oh, well, maybe they're finished, even though they didn't finish in the same way that they normally do. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe they're finished. But then there was an angelic being that came in, and there was an Andromedan being that came in. And they said, now we are going to teach you about the ley lines of the body. Well, me being me, it's like, oh, well, we call those the meridians. And they're like, no, it's not the meridians. And I'm like, well, that's what we call the ley lines of the body. And they're like, no, Sheila, listen, we're going to teach you about the ley lines of the body, which are different from the chakras, which are really energy vortexes. And it's different than the meridians, which is what provides that life force energy for the spiritual bodies. And I'm like, well, tell me more, and they started working and they began to teach me about these ley lines that run left and right through us and from us, and also front and back through us, front and back. And so they connect us in with all things, all dimensions, all times, etc. That's why we can never truly be separate. But anyway, so they said what we're going to do is we're going to begin to work on the structure and move up. And so they started at the feet and they taught me how that first ley line is connected in with the crystalline core of the earth. And the crystalline core also holds all of the codes of life for this planet. And within those codes of life is our original divine perfected human template. So with each of these ley lines, they're connected in with different realms of reality. They're connected in with different dimensions, different densities, different aspects of our holographic morphogenic field. They're connected in differently with layers of our soul, etc. And so after about 3 months, and of course, I always take notes so I can share what I'm experiencing and what I hear or see with the client.
Yeah.
And so after about 3 months, they came back and they said, okay, now we want you to take all your notes, put it together, and you're going to teach this to others because the time is now on this planet. We no longer, because they go in and they can heal soul wounds, they can clear things unbelievably quick. But they said, now you're going to teach it. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. This is my healing modality, and you gave it to me. And they're like, it's our healing modality that we're allowing you to witness. And I'm like, so there again, the ego, bring me back home. But my healing team is also part of my collective.
Mm.
And so they're just like, they laugh at me all the time. It's like, man, you really are human. You got your human going on today, big time. And, so they give me a hard time with that. But within this healing modality, it's so miraculous because people's vibrational bodies shift and change, and they can clear out emotions. We can identify things that are stuck. Sometimes I'll find a soul wound in there that may come from another planetary existence. Someone may have been part of the Draconian, the Lyran Wars, and they may have been involved on Sirius, or they could have been in Alpha Centauri. It just depends. And they will also tell the person where their soul energy originated from and give them their vibrational signal name.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. When I started putting it together, I'm like, whoa, this is really cool.
So, can you speak of any successes without actually identifying anybody? And say, what I mean by successes is when you're working with somebody that you see a massive change in them. Have you got any stories around
Oh, there's a lot of stories.
that?
One lady was severe ADD,
Yeah.
and afterwards, she was no longer ADD, but she had to work on the behavior of the ADD, and she has gotten that under control. And that was with one session. There was another lady who, after this process, had a spiritual awakening. And I hear that a lot of times, or people a lot of times find out during this process that, wow, I had other soul aspects that were in there. And my collective will identify that and say, oh, we've got a soul aspect that's come in, they're unaware. We're going to go ahead and shift the gridding of the body. We're going to lock this down into place for them. So there's so many things that happen, and everybody, all the experiences are unique. And some people just say, wow, I've never been so relaxed. Some people say, wow, I went to a totally different planet and this is what I experienced. And so it's going to be individual.
Mm, mm, mm. Now, you mentioned shamanism before and how that actually helped change you as well. How did that actually come about for you, and how did it impact your life?
Mm. So when I first started learning about shamanism, one of the first teachings that I received of the indigenous teachings was the fact of the division of the spirit keepers that hold the north, the south, the east, and the west. We studied the architects of creation, et cetera, and became familiar with them. And then we learned shamanic journey. And when I started shamanic journey, man, I was top of my class. I could get in to all the different realms of the world. I could go to the upper world, I could travel, and that is where I really started having some deep conversations with my collective. Now, at that time, because they, just like any other spirit helpers that are out there, they show themselves in the forms that are most like to bring us peace or to ground us or whatever. And
Mm.
so they had these quasi human forms, and they were individual aspects, like, well, I'm this guide and this is what I do, and I'm this angelic being and this is what I do, and I'm this, and this. And they didn't even identify themselves as, oh, I'm an Arcturian aspect, or I'm this, that, and yeah. I didn't believe in that yet. When I first started out with shamanism, it was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, I'm not crazy. The people I'm seeing are there. The messages I'm receiving are real. And so going into the underworld, I began to study, or the lower world. I shouldn't say underworld, because then a lot of people get different concepts about that. But
Yeah.
it's a world where we can go in, and truly it's kind of like the etheric double of this world. And we can go in, we can talk with disembodied souls. We always have to be careful, because you can always bring back, etheric ooh, or the black goo, kind of stuff, when we travel back. But, if you take your guides in with you, you typically enter in through some type of a hole in the ground, and you travel in and you connect into this other world. Well, when I was there, I remember there was this one place that we would go. There was like this rock outcroppment. There was this beautiful tree. There was water, very picturesque. And we would just lean up on, these rocks and kind of sit on. Sorry, I've been talking since 7:30 this morning.
That's okay.
So we would kind of sit on these rocks. And I asked him, I said, Am I a body snatcher? Did I steal this body?"
Mm.
And they were like, "No, no, no." And they began to explain to me about pre-birth agreements. They also explained to me about how in emergency situations, which was what I entered in, that one soul can enter when the other soul leaves. Because if, even though this soul wanted to leave, there was such a love for the children that that's one of the reasons that the soul stayed. But when I said, "Hey, I'll come in," they're like, "Man, great, I'm out of here." Because I would raise those children as a higher version of the soul that was in the body. And so when my guides told me that, I was like, "Oh, thank goodness." And so then I just began understanding that in shamanism, you also learn how to connect. You can put your consciousness in a rock, you can extract information, connect with the soul of a tree, which I was already doing, but I thought I was crazy. I'd be sitting on my porch, I'd be drumming, and a tree would say, "Hey, hey, over to your right. Hey." I'm like, the tree is talking to me? I know I'm losing it now. But this tree actually, and that's only because of shamanism that I knew I could connect. But you have to understand, the frequency that I brought in was so high that I kind of got a free pass on a lot of stuff. I
Mm.
didn't have to do all of the work and develop the foundation to be able to do those connections. It was just automatic for me,
Mm.
because where I came from, it was all telepathic communication anyway. And so to be able to, communicate with trees or rocks or animals or anything like that was just, that was just a natural state of being that was allowed to be experienced through the vessel. But this tree that was talking to me, it came up and it had two huge branches. And right in the middle of those two huge branches, there was a black hole. And I'd never, it was a crack. And these large black ants had gotten in there. And as they're saying, "Hey, hey, pay attention to me," they're like, "Go in the house." Now, I use a product called Miracle 2. I'm not endorsed by the company. I'm not trying to sell anybody a product, but it's great stuff. And so it does a ton of things. And one of them that it can do is act as an insecticide. But the tree said, "Go in, get pure green soap, and pour it into me. Pour 1 cup." And I'm like, "Well, this is pretty specific information this tree's giving me, so I better listen." So I go in, I get the cup, I pour it down in the crack, and all of these ants start pouring out. And so that tree was actually dying because those ants had infested it and made these
Yeah.
homes in it. And that green soap saved it. Well, if I was just sitting on my porch normally and a tree started trying to get my attention, if I didn't understand that through shamanism, I would have not paid attention to that tree. And a
Yes.
lot of people get these nudges in life. It's kind of like, I don't know why I just keep wanting to look at that tree. What the heck is going on with that tree? And so we get these calls, but we don't understand what they are. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you do this and you do that. And it's like, you know what? We can all do it. Anything I can do, anybody can do. Everybody just has different abilities to tap into things at different times. So when we raise our vibrational frequency, we can easily tap in to all of these things. And that's what shamanism for me was about, was learning to tap into that organic nature of life, the organic nature of the earth, be able to communicate, to be able to walk in balance. And one of the things people when I started teaching my own circles, one lady said, well, I just never believed when the Native Americans were worshiping trees. And I'm like, which Native Americans were those? Because I don't know of any. Well, they would always this. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You have to understand they were honoring the life force, which is the creator's life force, which is prime source, mother, father, God, prime source, creator's energy. Okay. They weren't worshiping a tree. They were honoring the life force, and they give honor to all living things. And for me, coming in and learning shamanism and learning how to walk gently on the earth, how to incorporate balance into my life is one of the greatest gifts I think that I ever received, because it allowed that integration process to really happen seamlessly without me fighting against it.
Excellent.
Long
Excellent.
answer to a short question.
No, no, no. That was a really good answer. I really appreciate it. And it does ground the understanding of shamanism in the everyday and how it works. And I think that's beautiful. Now, I've got another question for you. We're getting close to the end. So, how can people get in touch with their spirit guides or angels? What's a process that's simple for people that just want to start touching on this sort of understanding?
Yeah. Well, the thing that I always do is have people to just sit back, to relax, not to have any preconceived notions, but to create for themselves in their minds a beautiful garden. And a lot of people are like, well, I can't do that. And so then I'm like, okay, close your eyes, and I want you to see your living room. Can you see your living room? Well, yeah. Okay. Do you see your front door? Well, yeah. Open your front door. Can you do that? Yeah. Can you walk outside? Yeah. Can you look around? Yeah. Tell me what you see. I said, it's no different. So create, imagine. And people are like, well, I'm afraid I'm making it up. Well, guess what? It's going to feel that way at first, because world of spirit has to use what we have, our lexicon of information. Okay. And so get into a nice quiet space, create yourself a beautiful garden with a little bench, maybe some water, whatever feels good to you. And then you're just sitting there and you just ask them to come, and they will come. And when you first have them come, ask them 3 times, are you my angel and are you of the light? Because there's a difference, because there's all kinds of beings just ready and waiting to interact with us, and some
Yes.
of them, they're just jokesters, and
Yes.
they just get a kick out of, I mean, remember, forever's a long time. You got to amuse yourself somehow. Oh, look at
Absolutely.
this human, I can get them to do this, whatever.
Yeah.
But so always ask 3 times, and then just be open to receive what comes. And when you think that you're making it up, you're really not, because that's them speaking through you. 9 times out of 10, you'll first hear them in your own voice, and they'll be giving you information. And so dropping into a space of quiet stillness, opening up, walking through a process. Maybe you walk into the garden, you sit down, and you call them. And a lot of people say, well, nobody ever comes. I don't know what to do. And it's like, just relax with it. Enjoy that space, because they will come, because they're there. And everyone, the angelic realm also has been assigned to this planet. And so you have your angels, your archangels, and you go all the way up to the seraphim. But the angels, every angel, every person on this planet has a single angel that's assigned to them. That's their job. And if you're not calling on your angels, you're not letting them do their job. Okay. Can you imagine how boring it is? It's like, oh my gosh, I could have helped them get through this. They're not even calling on me, like sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting on us to invite them.
Mm,
And they can make your life so much easier. So
true.
if you need something, something's lost, call on Archangel Michael, reveal, reveal, reveal 3 times. You need protection, call on Archangel Michael because he's the primary guardian within the archangel realm of this planet. And these are beings that exist. They are true beings.
That's a great message. So, Sheila, how can people find you and work with you?
Well, the easiest way is they can go to my website, SheilaSeppi.com. That's SheilaSeppi.com. They can go to sessions. They can look through. I offer like a 30, a 60, and a 90-minute session that I can work with people. If you want to do a soul reconnection, I would recommend that you do the 90-minute. I can do it in the 60 minutes, but I don't get to do a lot of follow up with you. And I like, to take that extra 30 minutes to kind of find out where you are, to get you relaxed, to go through the process, and then to help you integrate a little bit. So SheilaSeppi.com.
Excellent, Sheila. So, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your understanding of a multidimensional life. It's astounding, and I really resonate with it. I've had a lot of experiences myself, so to hear somebody else talk about it is actually extra validation for me. So I appreciate that. Thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll say goodbye to the listeners. Wow, what a show! It was a pleasure talking to Sheila, and if you really enjoyed the show, please get in contact with her and tell her you enjoyed this show as well. I mean, it's rare to find somebody that actually is so multidimensionally connected with a great understanding of it, and to hear her story, how she came from a place of being, what would you say, like a normal sort of, mother of many children, and in a sort of life situation which she wasn't too happy with, and very ill, and then have that massive change. That would have been wild. I mean, it just seems to be that a lot of shamans actually go through a lot of heavy sort of change before they change into something else, and become lighter and light beings themselves. And that's what happened to Sheila. It's very, very cool. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Please share the show to one person that you think will enjoy the show too. And yeah, if you could please rate the show 5 stars on your podcast app and write something really nice about it. I'd really appreciate it, and it would really help me to help other people to find these stories, and then they increase their understanding of the world. So thank you so much for your time, and until next episode, bye for now.